You're listening to Three Things to Know with Stephanie Haney, with experts and insiders on what you need to know in Northeast Ohio.
Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to the Three Things to Know podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Haney, and as always, I am thrilled to have you here with me to talk about something that's going on in Northeast Ohio that you need to know about. And today we are having the very interesting conversation, always interesting conversation, I think, when we're talking about this topic, about the state of affairs of dating in Cleveland. Now, the reason this podcast episode came about is because I got an email from a company called Clever Real Estate, and they did what I consider to be the very clever thing of ranking the top 50 most populated metro areas in terms of how great of a city it is for singles. And Cleveland was on that list, and drumroll please, Cleveland came in at number 7, which is pretty good, ranking over a lot of major cities for the dating scene in the Cleveland area. Now, they arrived at this ranking by analyzing a good amount of data. Here's what they took a look at. They took a look at data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the U.S. Census, Yelp, and a company called the Black Tux. That is a tuxedo rental company, in case you were wondering. I guess it makes a lot of sense. You're going to look at data from a tuxedo rental company if you're talking about singles. Maybe you're trying to see who's renting a tuxedo for weddings or, whatever, what have you. Or maybe just fancy dates. Who knows? Anyway, that's one of the companies they got their data from. Here are the criteria that they looked at. Now, I'm going to tell these to you in the order of the things they gave the most weight to the least weight to. So they gave the most weight to the percentage of the unmarried population. Now, I would argue unmarried is very different from single, but for all intents and purposes, that's what we're going with here. So they give the most weight to the percent of the unmarried population, followed by disposable income amongst working single people, and then the number of restaurants in the area, then the number of other things to do. We're talking about arts, entertainment, and recreation establishments in the area. And this is all per 100,000 residents so that they could compare it across cities, by the way. And then the average star rating of the top date night restaurants on Yelp. Now, I'm not sure how they decided what is a date night restaurant and what isn't, but that is what they said. And then they took points away for things costing a lot of money. They took points away for the cost of an average date, the most points away for that, and then also for the overall cost of living in the area. And all of that taken into consideration, Clever Real Estate decided that Cleveland is the number 7 city for singles. So, they've got their findings, and we'll talk about those. But what we really wanted to get into is what it's really like on the ground for people dating in Cleveland. So we turn to the experts, and we have a couple experts joining us for a panel discussion today on dating in Cleveland. We have a matchmaker from It's Just Lunch Cleveland. Her name is Katie Malone. She'll be our expert source of information. And then we have 2 people who are in the dating world. We're talking to Allison Symons, a single woman, and Adam Gockowski, a single man. And they're going to give us their take on some of the key findings that Clever Real Estate came to when it comes to Cleveland and what it's like to be dating and how good it is to be dating in Cleveland. So let's bring them in right now and get this conversation going. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Three Things to Know podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to start by going around our little panel here and asking you to introduce yourselves. Katie Malone, we'll start with you.
Hi guys, I'm Katie. I work as a matchmaker for It's Just Lunch Cleveland, so I'm so excited to be here.
Katie, how long have you been in the matchmaking space?
So I just actually celebrated 1 year with It's Just Lunch.
Congratulations. Very much looking forward to your insight here in the Cleveland dating scene. All right, let's talk to one of our daters, Allison Symons. Allison, nice to meet you. Introduce yourself to our friends here.
Hi, I'm Allison. I am a kindergarten teacher and currently live in Lakewood.
And what is your relationship status, Allison?
Currently single.
And are you actively dating at the moment?
Not actively right now.
Okay, taking a little break, kind of just...
Taking a break, little healing, yes.
All right, and we also have Adam Gockowski. Adam, nice to meet you. Please introduce yourself to our friends.
Yeah, I'm Adam Gockowski. I'm also in Lakewood. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, are you currently single at the time?
Currently, the pandemic hasn't been easy. A lot of quarantine. So, as people are getting vaccinated and, trying to get back out, that's where we are now.
Definitely. And how are you feeling with your comfort level with dating right now? Are you actively dating if someone is vaccinated, or?
Uh, yeah, for the most part. I mean, not to get too political, but yeah, in like Lakewood, it's a lot of vaccinations already, so it's pretty easy to do if you're in that situation.
Okay, very interesting that we think of vaccinations as a political topic. That's a topic for another day.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm like, yeah, we might have to edit that part out, so I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's totally fine. But we're here today to talk about the state of dating in the Cleveland area because there was a recent study by Clever Real Estate. They analyzed a bunch of things. They say that Cleveland is one of the top 7 cities for singles. So we're going to get down to the bottom of that right now. First off, one of the things they base that on, Cleveland, they say about 51% of the population is single or not married is actually how they define it now. I'm going to say I think those are 2 very different definitions, but I'm going to go to our matchmaker, Katie Malone. Katie, does that jive with what you're seeing in the matchmaking space?
I think that hearing that about 51% of people are single does drive. In the business that I'm in, really, it doesn't matter if it's 100%, 2%. I mean, people are always looking for love. I think it's just a really great time to be single, especially coming out of a pandemic, getting your feet on the ground, kind of exploring again, going to new places. So I would say that's probably right on target. And we are super busy on a consistent basis. So I think it's just a great time to be dating.
That's a good point too, and I guess when it comes down to percentages, as long as you meet someone who is single, I guess it doesn't really matter how many people are. But I'll ask you, Allison, does that sort of fall in line with what you're seeing out in your social settings? Do you feel like you're seeing more single than married people?
I would say there are a handful of single people. Cleveland is a small town though. Like, dating is not hard by any means. You can go on dates all the time, but there's always a connection to some way, some friendship somehow, I feel like. But dating can be fun. It also can be difficult to find somebody that you want to go on more than 1 or 2 dates with as well.
That's the truth. Once you get in that 51%, how many do you want to see again? What about you, Adam? Does that in line with what you're seeing out there?
Yeah, honestly, it's not surprising, especially the places that I'm going towards. Yeah, of course you're going to see married couples, but yeah, I mean, especially being in, Lakewood, or if you're in Cleveland Heights or Shaker Heights, where there's a lot of social scene, you're going to see quite a bit of singles out.
Okay, so the supply is not lacking. So now I'm going to stick with you, Adam. Where is it that you are meeting people? Are you using the apps? Are you relying on in-person meetings?
I used to be very anti online dating just because I'm still a little, taboo about it. You don't know who's going to be on the other end. And of course, with catfish being on television, it puts ideas in your head. But once the pandemic happened and we're all stuck in our homes, it made sense to be online because for many reasons, how else are you going to meet somebody new if you're told you have to stay in your house? So, now it's the stigma's kind of gone with me.
What about you, Allison? Are you an app user?
I am an app user when I am dating. I stick with Hinge pretty much right now. I feel like some of the other ones are for a younger crowd. So Hinge has been successful in the past. Obviously, I'm still single, but it does work.
I will say when I was on dating apps, and I've used them periodically throughout time, I always found that people were a little more serious about dating on Hinge than the other ones, because it seems like you got to put more work in to make a Hinge profile.
Yes, I agree with that.
And what about you, Katie? Where are you finding your potential matches for your dating clients?
So that's a great question. Because I work for a matchmaking service, it's more people come to us when they're ready. So people are coming to us, they're reaching out, they are ready to really invest in something that could be really great, and we're there to support them. So it's not necessarily, there's singles all over the city, and I think it's just about when our clients are ready to come to us and really trust us with that journey is when we're finding the most people come on board.
Okay, yeah, I think that's probably like an elevation of people who are more and more invested in dating. The lower scale app, maybe Hinge, the matchmaking service with It's Just Lunch, that makes sense. It's going to be like an elevation of people there. Okay, I've got a question. This is just for our daters. Now, based on this study, they said the average star rating of the top date night restaurants in Cleveland on Yelp is 4.2 stars. Cleveland has a ton of restaurants. They're saying 73 restaurants, 37 entertainment options per 100,000 residents. I don't know how they get into those details and figure that out or what that really means, but that's what they're saying, and it sounds like a lot. When it comes to dating, Allison, do you find the options for places to go and things to do are adequate? Are you into that drinks and dinner situation, or are you preferring something else?
I think it's an adequate scene here for sure. I enjoy drinks for a first date, maybe along with an activity, like you could go to High and Dry for bowling, or you could go to shuffleboard, something just to like more than just sitting down and talking. You could engage in some kind of small activity to get to know the person. Dinner, I'm more like a second date kind of person for that, because if I don't like you, I don't want to sit and eat a meal with you.
That's quite a commitment to be sitting there staring at someone's face.
Yes.
Adam, what about you? How do you feel about that?
It's interesting that she brought that up, because I'm very anti-sports event. I know it's hard to believe with my background, but yeah, you don't, for like a first date, you don't want to go somewhere like a Tribe game or a Browns game where you're with the person for hours and hours on end. And there's a lot of places in Cleveland that, you know, a lot of Clevelanders are forgetting that they haven't been there in quite some time. And you could be like, oh, the Rock Hall, I haven't been there in like 10 years, or the Art Museum, or somewhere along those lines. So there's plenty of options that we kind of take for granted as Clevelanders.
That's true. And those exhibits are constantly changing in those places too. So even if you've been there kind of recently, that's another option to explore. Love that. Love that we're throwing out suggestions for our singles who are listening. Now, Katie, I'll ask you, do you feel like you have adequate options to plan different dates? Or do you even do that? Do you get into actually the planning of the date with your clients?
So I think Cleveland offers adequate planning for dates. What we do is we plan the first date, and our members are free to, you know, carry on that connection if they choose to. So we typically will plan something really low pressure. So it could be a happy hour, it could be a brunch, it could be a cup of coffee, it could really be lunch or a small dinner. So I think that Cleveland specifically just never has a shortage of things to do. I mean, there's restaurants that have live music. There's always something going on somewhere. There's festivals. So I think to not find a place to go on a date in Cleveland would be extremely difficult.
Especially in these warm weather months. There are so many very cute little festivals happening. I'll just give a shout out to Canton and the Balloon Classic. That's my favorite summer festival that happens in the Canton area during the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Once a year, so put it on your calendar, people. Okay, now let's talk about the cost of dating. I am suspect of this finding. So according to this survey, they say the average date night in America's 50 most populous metro areas costs about $113. They say an average date in Cleveland costs about $101. Now, this survey claims for this $101, you can get a rideshare, a dinner, 2 drinks, and a movie for 2 people. Now, aside from the fact that we have all just decided that is kind of a marathon date, especially if it's a first date. Adam, I'll ask you first. Do you feel like that number is true? Does that seem right to you? Yeah.
If you're getting a ride share, you're very confident. So that's the point. Because I mean, I would, if I went on a date with a lady and I'm like, hey, we're gonna get a ride share, that should be a red flag immediately, because it'd be like, we just met. Where else are we going? So there's that. But as in like food wise and drink wise, and depending on the activity, maybe, but I still $100, that, I mean, I might be selling myself cheap on air right now, but I can't imagine in most places, because Cleveland's very affordable. It's a great market for anything from restaurants to any of the events that we just spoke about. That seems a bit steep on the national level.
Okay, so you're saying it's high. You think you can have a date for 2 people less than $101?
Oh, for sure. You could probably split it down to 75.
Okay. Yeah. Allison, what do you think?
I agree with that, especially if it's a first date. One, I'm not ride sharing with anybody because I don't know you. But True. Yeah, if you're just going for drinks or a small activity, or maybe just getting apps, I would say around $75, unless you're enjoying the night and then the drinks keep going.
That's true. Okay, all right. So I think we were taking two different approaches to this because I was calling BS. I was thinking this number was low for all of those things. If you are actually getting a ride share, a dinner, 2 drinks, and a movie, I mean, a movie alone is like $30 for 2 people. So, yes. Okay. So maybe they're incorporating more things into that, and we're thinking of less things when we're thinking. But yeah, I would agree. $101, a lot of money to spend on a first date, for sure.
Are we okay? Oh, so it's strictly for first date. Yeah, there's no way.
Well, I don't know if it's strictly for first date under their surveys. But for our purposes, that's what we're talking about here. Okay. Next question. I will go to Adam for this. How do you decide who pays on a date?
Typically, I'm still kind of old-fashioned with that. I'll take the bill. And plus, in my eyes, if I did the invite, I pay. So I'm still very old school. I pay. It's my treat. But I'll take a free beer here and there.
Okay. Allison, how do you feel about that, deciding who pays on a first date?
First date should be the guy, I think so. And then once you get to the second date, as a girl, I'm like, oh, well, I'll get a couple drinks, you get the dinner. Like, you can split it based off of that as the further you go along. But first date should definitely be on the guy.
Okay. And, a lot of people do still have those traditional values for sure. I want to put out there on the record, I tried to get us some representation from the LGBTQ plus community because who knows what the norms are in that space. Would love to figure out how they're deciding who's dating, who's paying for that date. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get any responses before this podcast came out. But if you have thoughts on that, please let me know. Please DM me. I'll include them in the article on WKYC.com. We'd love to share that perspective with our viewers as well. And our listeners, because this is on YouTube and on the podcast platforms. A couple more questions here. The study did find that New Orleans is one of the best cities for singles, while San Jose ranked last. My question is, I'll start with Katie on this first. Do you have clients who are open to moving for love, or how do you feel about the prospect of potentially moving to a more single-friendly place?
We do have clients that really will move for love. I think if that comes in the later stages of dating. So right off that first date, are they going to move for love? Probably not. But we get to encourage them to be a little bit more open-minded. And when you have that connection, you got to hold on to it sometimes, especially if it's a good connection, and love can really be found anywhere. So I'm a big advocate for moving for love. I think when you find the right person and both people want it, I think it's definitely can be worth it. So we definitely have members that are willing to move, and we have some that are okay not moving, so it really just depends.
Okay. Allison, what about you? Would you be open to moving to a more single-friendly city, whatever that means, for love?
I would be open to moving with a partner, as in if we got to that space and we're like, one of us needs to go somewhere, yes, I would be open to that. Dating or moving just to date, probably not.
And Adam, how do you feel about that?
I agree completely with her on that. It's, because I would not drop everything in my life, friends, family, my job, whatever the case may be, to go to a city that I might potentially meet somebody. But yeah, I agree. If I was with somebody and they got a job transfer or whatever, that would be a different situation.
Sure. And I want to echo those sentiments as well. I've lived in a bunch of places. I lived in North Carolina. I've lived in Los Angeles. I lived in New York. Whenever I hear someone say, dating is so hard in LA, dating is so hard in New York, dating is so hard in Cleveland, I'm like, it's just geography. People are the same wherever you go. You're going to find the same characters, the same personalities across the country, at least in my experience. Okay. I want to get sort of a button-up conclusion from each of you. I'll start with Katie, our professional. What is your outlook on dating in Cleveland? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? Is it some other word that hasn't been invented yet?
My outlook is definitely positive. I just, being on this side of things, Cleveland's just a great place to date. I think, like I said, people are always looking for love. So I'm super hopeful. I see growth. I see people getting connected every single day. I see engagements. I see relationships. So I'm always going to be hopeful. I'm a huge advocate for love and for that journey. So I 100% am hopeful. I think it's definitely positive.
Okay. And Allison, how do you feel about the dating scene in Cleveland based on all of your experiences and your outlook for the future?
I'm still hopeful. When I'm ready to go back out there, I'm going to try again. I do love, and I just haven't found that person yet, but I'm always willing to try again. So I think Cleveland is a good city.
All right. And Adam, about you?
I think Cleveland just is such a hometown vibe to it that you can meet the quote unquote girl next door anywhere. And it's a lot of potential for everybody in the dating scene.
There you have it. Lots of potential and hope out there. I want to thank you all for being a part of our panel. We do also have a segment here on the 3 Things to Know podcast called Need to Know in NEO. And since you guys are in the field, you're out there doing the work, we're going to go straight to you guys for that today. We want to hear some hidden gems from you in the Northeast Ohio area. What are some places that you love to go or some ideas that you love for a first date? If you can each just share one, that would be wonderful. We'll start with our matchmaker, Katie Malone. What's something that people need to know in NEO in the dating world?
So I love Lakewood. The Lakewood vibe is very charming, and I love that both everyone on here has experienced Lakewood. I think it's one of my favorite restaurants, hands down, is Georgetown. And I think Lakewood just has a lot of hidden gems that are very romantic, very private. You know, like I said earlier, there's live music venues. We have the lake right next to us, so there's a lot of waterside restaurants. There's Nuevo, Pier W. So there really is just so many options. And I think my hands-down favorite place to go on a first date has been Georgetown and Lakewood.
Okay, what kind of food is Georgetown?
You know, it's a little bit more fine dining. It's a little bit mixture of Italian, American. It really has just a lot of options.
Okay, so Georgetown in Lakewood. Thank you, Katie. And we'll ask Allison now. Allison, what's your hidden gem that people need to know in NEO in the dating world?
I really love XYZ because I love their burgers. It's a small place. It's affordable. You can sit down and have a conversation. It's got a cute little alleyway patio that you can have fun at. And you can walk to a couple different places from there, too.
Oh, that's nice. So you have some options. You can bop around a little bit. Okay, XYZ. And Adam, we'll finish with you. What's the hidden gem people need to know in NEO?
I don't know how much of a hidden gem it is because it's already known, but Nano Brew. Awesome food, awesome beer. You can go to other places as well in the Ohio City district, and you have Mitchell's right there. So, yeah, it's perfect.
Oh, yeah, you can top it off with some ice cream. Who doesn't love that? Well, thank you for these great suggestions. Thank you for all of your insight into the dating world in Cleveland. So I think we can say, based on our unofficial survey, maybe Cleveland is one of the top 7 cities for singles. I don't know. How do we feel? Do we agree with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
All right, great. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say another quick thank you to our daters, Allison and Adam. Thank them for being so candid with what they're feeling and thinking and experiencing in the dating world here in Cleveland. And also our matchmaker from It's Just Lunch, Katie Malone. Thank you for that expert perspective. I want to take another look at some of the findings from Clever Real Estate, again, ranking Cleveland the number 7 city in the 50 most populated metropolitan areas for singles. Here's what they said about Cleveland. They said it's easier to meet singles here because of the population that's more than half single, not married, again, as they said. They say that Clevelanders have better than average odds of finding a date. They did also mention, though, it might not necessarily be the case within sub-communities of that. So again, we had hoped to talk to some members of the LGBTQ plus community. We had hoped to talk to some other marginalized groups. We unfortunately didn't get the opportunity to do that, but that's another conversation for another day, what the dating is like specifically within those subgroups. They do mention that the matchmaking services in Cleveland really help people go beyond those dating apps. So if that's something you're thinking about and maybe you are having trouble meeting some people, maybe you want to hit up Katie Malone from It's Just Lunch Cleveland. This is not an ad, but she was here today, so those services are out there. They're not the only game in town, but that is one of them. Let's take a look at some of the other cities, though, because some of this was a little surprising to me. Denver, Colorado came in at number 8, so Cleveland just above Denver. And actually, I do believe that our dater Allison just came back from Denver and was thinking the altitude was a little high. So she's happy here in Cleveland. She did share that with me privately off camera. But here's what I found very interesting. At the bottom, of course, we know San Jose was they consider the 50th in the ranking, so the worst, I guess, among those 50 metropolitan areas. So were 2 other California cities. Riverside came in at 49 and Sacramento came in at 48. But what I was surprised to see is New York at 47. Now, If I have to take a guess there, I'm going to guess that has a lot to do with the cost in New York, because I know that, as we said at the beginning of the podcast, they did deduct points for the cost of a date and also the cost of living. So I have a hunch there that that's why New York ended at the bottom, because there's just a lot of people and a lot of options in New York. So I bet you that was a big factor there. Okay, our daters and our matchmaker gave us what we need to know in NEO. So I'm just going to give you a couple more details about the places that they mentioned. Katie Malone mentioned Georgetown Vosh. Took a look at that. It's got a beautiful patio. You can check them out at georgetownvosh.com. They are on Detroit in Lakewood, right at Riverside Drive. And if you're familiar with that area, it's kind of like right across from Insomnia Cookies, which, by the way, is a delicious cookie company. Our dater Allison mentioned the XYZ Tavern. I actually had birthday drinks there 2 years ago, pre-pandemic. Lovely little place. They've got a DJ some nights. That's also on Detroit in Lakewood. That is at West 65th Street. And our dater Adam mentioned Nano Brew. That is in Ohio City, so a little bit outside of Lakewood. It is on West 25th Street, a little bit down from the West Side Market, kind of diagonal from Ohio City Burrito. If you're familiar with that area, it is at Bridge Avenue. So those are the spots that they recommend for a casual date. Not so casual that first one, but a couple casual dates, a couple different kind of dates you can go on there, according to the people who are on the ground doing it, experiencing the dating life in Cleveland. And that brings us to a good follow. And I am very happy to bring up a past guest of the podcast here. I'm talking about Rachel DeAlto. She is Match's chief dating expert. She came on the podcast to talk about what dating has been like during the pandemic, when those video dates were so popular, Zoom dates, FaceTimes. I would recommend going back and checking that out, because a lot of experts say that the Zoom dates are here to stay. People kind of like that opportunity to get to know each other a little bit before they meet someone in person. Very low impact. So she came on to talk about that, and she is just a great follow across social media platforms. She's great on Instagram. She's great on TikTok. She is great on Clubhouse. If you're not familiar with Clubhouse is a relatively new social media app. It's audio chat rooms. It's kind of like a live podcast that you can jump into. You can listen. You can also participate in the conversation. On all of those platforms, her username is Rachel DeAlto. It's RACHELDEALTO. And in addition to being Match's chief dating expert, she is also the author of a book that's coming out right now. You can get it on pre-order right now. It's called Relatable: How to Connect with Anyone, Anywhere, Even if it scares you. And she shares these great little short snippets of videos on Instagram and TikTok as well that are really good reminders about what it's like to sort of reach out and make that connection with people. So she is, again, on Instagram, TikTok, and Clubhouse, Rachel DeAlto. Her book comes out September 7th, but it is available for pre-order on Amazon.com. And I'll put that link in the show notes and the YouTube page, and also on WKYC.com. Very, very highly recommended. Definitely a good follow in Rachel DeAlto. And that's it for this week's 3 Things to Know podcast. Thank you for being here. I hope you learned something about dating here in Cleveland, maybe opened up your eyes to some new perspectives, maybe gave you some new ideas and just kind of an idea of what it's like out there for the unmarried population, which apparently is most of us here in Cleveland. If you like the show, I would love it if you would leave a rating and a review. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. That does help us connect with more people here in Northeast Ohio. And if this podcast has discussed nothing else, it's definitely connecting with people here in Northeast Ohio. And that's what we want to do. Thank you for being here, and I will see you back next week, my friends.
Thanks for listening to 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now to stay in the know.